Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin, and today we're looking at a super investor named Mohnish Pabrai. He just filed his 13F filing for the end of the second quarter 2023, and man, there are a lot of changes in his portfolio overall. He sold out of a couple of them completely, including Micron, and he bought a couple of new stocks that were a bit of a surprise to me overall. Not a bit of surprise, a huge surprise overall. Now, I have not been following Mohnish Pabrai as closely as I've wanted to over the last few months. Like I have historically done, I've been working a ton, unfortunately, so I can't follow him and other super investors like Warren Buffett, David Tepper, Howard Marks, and others. And you can see these books behind me. Those are some of the gentlemen that I follow very, very closely. And Mohnish Pabrai in particular, not only is he very interesting to listen to, if you get a chance to listen to his YouTube videos, but he has had a really good track record over the last 2 decades. Now, I will say over the last, I would say, year or two, his portfolio has not performed as well as it has done historically, and that can happen. In fact, this book behind me by Howard Marks, called The Most Important Thing, he talks about risk, and in one of the chapters, he talks about investors, and even though investor is not doing well in a short period of time, say like a year, even 2 years, it doesn't mean that they're a bad investor. Just maybe the market is not in tune or aligned with their investing strategy at the time. It's really important to look at an investor over 10 years, even 20 years, to really get a good idea on how well they're doing. Even my portfolio is up over 40% this year alone, but that doesn't mean I'm a good investor. It has to be over a long track record overall. And Mohnish overall has done a very, very good job. If you've listened to him, he talks about trying to find stocks that he can buy and basically get a 2x return in about a 3-year period, which comes out to a 26% compounded rate, which is absolutely incredible. S&P 500, over the last couple of decades has been around a 10% compounding machine. So if you can get a 26% compounding machine, that is unbelievable. So if you're actually getting, say, I think it's a 10% return, I think you can double your money in around 7 years. So if you're, doubling your money in 3 years, that's a 26% return, which is just absolutely phenomenal overall. And before I get into his portfolio, I'm going to show you a website called dataroma.com. So I'm pulling his portfolio from. Keep in mind, Dataroma is a great free website to go to, but it's only going to show stocks that investors own through the 13F filing. So it's only going to show stocks on the American stock exchanges, so either the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So we don't see Mohnish Pabrai's holdings in other exchanges outside the United States. So if he owns any in the Asian markets or European markets, we're not going to see that on Dataroma. But nonetheless, it's really interesting to see overall what he's bought and sold on the American stock exchanges. So let's go take a look at that now. All right, so you can see his portfolio in front of you right now on Dataroma, and you can see only 2 stocks in his portfolio. Again, these are only stocks that he owns on the American stock exchanges. He typically holds 7 to 10 stocks overall. So he has several of them that are outside the United States. For example, I think he still owns Tencent. I'm not for sure on that. Drop a comment down below if you know. At one time, it seemed like he owned maybe Prosus as well. Edelweiss is another one that he's owned historically. Racis or Ricis, I'm not sure how to say that. It's another one that he's owned for quite a long time as well. If you know any others, drop them down in the comment section. It'd be really interesting if you heard anything else. So right now, according to Dataroma, his portfolio is $73 million. It's actually quite a bit higher than that. Just because it's not showing the stocks outside the United States. But nonetheless, let's take a look at his activity during the quarter. And wow, so 3 stocks he sold off completely. So Micron, Brookfield, and Seritage. Now, Micron, I guess, was somewhat a surprise because he was so heavily invested in that for quite a while. But he did sell some last quarter. So he sold about 14% of his position in Micron. So I guess in some ways it's not a complete surprise that he sold out of it because he sold some last quarter, but he's been a very strong bull on that. Now, the market economy has changed over the last year or so, and chip makers in general have had a hard time. And I think Micron still has a good long runway ahead of it overall, but is a cyclical business. And when the market economy is not doing well, Micron's not going to do well. And we've been seeing that in their numbers over the last year, and they've really fallen off. Their gross margins have been hurt drastically on that. Even Samsung over the last 6 months has come out and said they're going to stop making memory chips or DRAM chips, I believe, because they just have a surplus on their hands. So that's interesting there. Brookfield, that was one that was a surprise to me because he seemed to really like that. He bought back in them, I think it was September of last year. So he hadn't owned it for very long, maybe 6, 7, 8 months, something like that before he sold. And Brookfield actually kind of split into two different stocks, so BAM and then BN. But maybe he just saw there wasn't a growth that he thought it was going to. They weren't going to leverage as much as they were going to say they were going to, and he sold out. I don't know. But that was a surprise overall. The other one here is Heritage Growth Properties, ticker symbol SRG. He's had this one for a while. He sold a big chunk of it earlier this year. So that one's not a surprise. In fact, I'm surprised he held on as long as he did. It's a REIT. Now, the two that he bought, I had actually never heard of before. So this Alpha Metallurgical Resources, this other one here, Consol Energy, so ticker symbol AMR, and then ticker symbol CEIX. And again, I never heard of those at all. And so when I see these resources, you see energy, right off the top of my head, I start thinking, commodities. I start thinking like, potentially maybe oil and gas. The only one that I really had a chance to look into over the last 24 hours was this Consol Energy. And when I first started looking into it, I was thinking oil and gas, and I started digging in and then realizing it's not oil and gas, it is coal. So this is their website here. So Fuel the World for a Better Tomorrow. So you can see the coal in the background here. I also had no idea there's different types of coal. So if you know the different types of coal, drop them down in the comment section. It would be interesting to hear about that because I just thought there was one type of coal and didn't know that there was more. So that was a surprise to me because I know in the United States, we're trying to get away from coal. They're saying it's not really clean energy. And I think we've gone from roughly 40% in the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, 40% electricity came from coal burning. And now today it's around 20%. So that's been cut in half. So you would think that coal, demand for coal is going down, but that's not necessarily the case if you look global wide. So the Asian markets, China specifically is the largest one in the entire world that uses coal. India is the second one that's out there as well. And actually, coal has been increasing as far as consumption goes, and they're, at least from the data that I've seen, it's going to be increasing going out to the future. In fact, this is a part of their PowerPoint presentation, Consol Energy, over the last, I think it was this, their investor presentation from May. So just a couple of months ago. And I thought this slide was really, really interesting. It shows LNG remains short supply. So LNG is supply of natural gas. And you can see the supply-demand gap over here. And basically what this is showing is that demand is increasing and there's just not enough supply for natural gas. So this is where coal comes into play outside the United States. In fact, I just recently read that China just approved 2 very large coal plants that will be going into production. Then India is also increasing production as well. And so it looks like, on paper anyway, that the demand for coal and then what Consol Energy provides with coal should go up here in the near term and should be going really up over the next year. And so maybe that is why Mohnish is buying into this company, right? And we go down here just a little bit. You can see Indian cement growth supports increased by PAMC coal demand. So that is where, when I was talking about India also increasing their production, it was more for the cement growth. And keep in mind that Mohnish, he's from India. I mean, that's where he spends obviously a lot of times in the United States, but that's where he's from. So he knows the Indian market really better than anyone. And it kind of makes me believe that that's where he's probably started hearing about this and looking into the company, was from the Indian aspect. but then also finding out that, these plants from China are being built and other things too. So interesting, or maybe it's just because of the Indian growth as well. I don't know. But another thing I thought was really interesting about this company too is when I was looking at their balance sheet, and I'm on Ticker Terminal right now, if you're kind of wondering, and I was looking at their net debt down here, and their net debt is negative. So negative 39 is this, and yeah, it's United States, so USD. So negative $39 million, which tells me that they have more cash than debt. So they're in a really good place as far as debt goes. In fact, we look at their cash situation. So their total cash and short-term investments is around $290 million. Their total current liabilities are around $413 million. Total liabilities, $1.3 billion. So their working capital is actually looking pretty good right now. So their current assets, if we kind of go up here, is $578 million. Come down here, their current liabilities are $413 million. So they have enough money to cover any kind of costs over the next year with their current assets, which is absolutely phenomenal. Their long-term debt is $207 million. Again, they had $290 million of cash and short-term investments. So their balance sheet is in really good shape. And when I've seen a lot of these commodity companies, a lot of times their balance sheets are just an absolute wreck. They have tons of debt, a lot of even short-term debt, and this company doesn't have that. So that is also really, really good overall. Now, if we just look at some ratios real quick, they'll probably be all over the place. Actually, I haven't even looked at this yet. So return on common equity, yeah, all over 5, 15, 49, 18, 5, 50. So, with these commodity companies, these ratios, it's hard to really gauge because they're so cyclical. And, obviously Mohnish Pabrai thinks that this company is going to be doing really good in the short and potentially long term. So if we look at a 3-year stock chart for this company, you can see it's up 1,400% over that time frame. Now, over the last year, this is kind of a weird chart. I'm not sure if Ticker Terminal showing it the right information because it's basically showing it's up 15%, but it's showing $69 as the stock price a year ago. And the chart here shows like $63 here as of this last week. But if I look up here, it's $79. So I'm not sure what's going on with this chart. But if I believe it, $69 a year ago and it's $79 today. Now, if we look at a stock chart over the last 6 months, again, Mohnish Pabrai bought this stock here in the last quarter. So let's say it's kind of in this range here. So it looks like it kind of varied from $50 all the way up to, well, I guess the highest point was around 64. So it's kind of hard to tell where he maybe bought it. Maybe it's around $60. Is maybe a conservative guess on that overall. So if that's the case, he's up quite a bit as we speak if the stock chart is right. All right, so that was Mohnish's portfolio as of the second quarter. So just to summarize, he sold out of 3 positions. He sold out of Micron, he sold out of Heritage Growth Properties, and he sold out of Brookfield. But we saw those 2 new positions in his portfolio. So we saw Consol Energy, which I spent more time on this video. They also bought Alpha Metallurgical Resources. Hopefully I said that correctly. So interesting. Have you guys done any research on these 2 particular companies? What did he say in his videos, if he said anything at all? I'd be surprised if he didn't drop any kind of nuggets or sprinkle some kind of seeds in there, and then all of a sudden these just kind of show up overall. Do you know if he still owns Tencent? Do you know if he still owns Prosus? Be curious to hear from you guys overall. Thank you so much for watching. If there's another super investor you want me to do a video on, let me know. Drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the other side. Take care and God bless.